Welcome all. Also, I'm going to do a bit of wood turning, one of my favourite passions to do. I'm just using these, they're a little oil burner. I'm going to turn the bit so it all goes in and shapes up. So that's what I'm going to get on with. Hope you enjoy it. I'll get on with it now. I've got an old piece of pine up in the lathe. Just an old bit from another project, so I should be working to make a vessel for it. Here I'm using my big gauge just to get it into some sort of roundness, because it's an old bit that's been off the lathe for a while, so it's tended to move. Just round it over a bit. Just working a general shape on it at the moment. It depends on how it's going, which gauge I like to use. Decided for this, I want a sort of round, bulbous shape to it. I think it'll work quite well with a bit of wood I got. It's oversized for what I need, but it's a bit I've had kicking around for a while. I knew I'd find a use for it eventually. That's the beauty of wood turning. You can use a lot of your old bits, or you'll find a project for them eventually. See here, I'm now using my spindle gauge. I'm sort of getting a bit more shape and facing it off, so it's got a bit of a flat edge for when I do the drilling. Try to sweep it round so it blends in and keep a general curve going, and then it, I don't know, just the way I do it. Now setting up the Fostner bit, already got it chucked up. As I said, it's a 41mm. It'll, a 41 Fostner bit, don't need to say anymore. I'll slowly wind it in, and it takes a little bit. You'll find different woods and all drill at better speeds. Find the right one, I'll bet. And you can see it's, at the low speeds it's cutting quite well. I tend to do the bigger bits on a lower speed so they don't heat up, and take them off and clear the old swarf off as I go, like. Again, keeps it clear, stops it overheating and taking the temper out the drill and blunting it. Well, for this type of thing, an old paintbrush works quite well. It's actually just a cheap and cheerful one. Not much good for painting or anything, but brilliant for removing the dust and all off of this lot. It's a reasonably deep hole, so you'll see it takes a few passes to get it right. I want it so just the neck of the bottle with the oil is just above the top, is what I'm aiming for. I think that'll look quite good without seeing too much of the glass. I've run out of length on my spindle there, so that's why I moved the tailstock closer. Then it gives me enough depth and all to work with. As you see, I've got safety glasses on. It always pays with wood turning. I either use glasses or sometimes I use a face shield, because a bit of that wood in your eye is not a good idea. It does smart somewhat. You can see I'm eyeing the bottle, or a container, whatever you like to call it, up against the bit so I can get a approximate. I can judge the depth I need to drill it to then. Again, with something like this, not got to be exact, just get it to where I think it's going to look right and go from there. I can always make it deeper. Ain't far off. No, it should be about right. Just a little bit finishing that last little bit, and then that should be it, and I'll move on to the next bit. You see, now I've done with the drilling, working a bit more on the shape again now. As you know, probably noticed I adjusted the speed. to get it a bit more, it machines better at higher speeds, or reasonably high speeds. Just hacking a bit more off so I can get down to the reasonable size I want. There's nothing specific in this, it's just where and how I want the shape to be. Like, that's the beauty of it, you just do it as you want. Each bit of wood tells me a different story. With doing the shaping on the curves, I tend to find for me the smaller gauge and just works better for me for this type of turning. Like, you'll find a different tool yourself, you'll find a favourite you work with. That's the beauty of wood turning, there's very little hard and fast rules. It tends to be more what you want and what you find comfortable. Like, you can see it's starting to take shape. I'm getting there with it, just checking the depth. It's about where I want it, and then yeah, it's all, yeah, do it as you like. I've established the overall height of the piece of work now, and I'm just with the old parting tool, that'll give me my basic bottom then. So I'm parting away a lot of it. I'm leaving enough in the middle to give plenty of for when I'm turning it, but that establishes where my bottom will be, and then I can curve the rest of it to it. Now I've got the bottom established, I'm starting to work on that side of it. Then I can get the curve as I want it then. As I said before, it's going to be a fairly bulbous one, just what I think will work with the wood. I'm back to my small gouge now to refine the shape a bit more. It's just the beauty of wood turning, you can do it as you want. You get a basic idea and just play with it. I find it a fantastic hobby because it's just incredibly therapeutic. When you're working on it, all you're worried about is that little bit of spinning wood. Everything else in your mind goes away. It's fantastic for relaxing. I've got the main sort of shape done now. I'm doing a bit of refining with a scraper. You get a finer cut with it, and you get a more finished cut. So I use various different scrapers, depends what works at the time. Like, notice when you're using a scraper, the wood that comes off, it's a lot finer. You see, rather than chips, it comes away almost as like a stream, because you're more paring it than actually just cutting it off. And you'll find you get a finer cut if you change the angle of the scraper. You don't have to have it flat. You can see here, I've got it here at quite a obtuse angle, and then that really gives you a fine cut comes off of it, and it leaves you with a very good fine finish. If you feel it as you're turning, you'll feel any inconsistencies or ridges or whatever. Only lightly touch it. Obviously you don't want to try grab hold of it, but just lightly run my fingers over it. Then I can feel any inconsistencies or ridges or whatever. Better you can see it sometimes. This scraper is quite handy because it has the bit on the end that's got different profiles on it. You can then change it for when you want a different edge or different profile. As you can see, I'm just tidying the inside up a bit now, and it works very well for this type of work. I like to refine the inside a bit, even though most people will never see it or never take any notice of it, but it's I like to finish it pretty well in there. It just means a job well done. Then I should bring it back and start to round over the edge a little bit where it's at the top, like. Won't do much of a curve on it, but just take the sharp edge off. There's less chance of splintering out then, and you get a finer finish on it. Again with this, you can see I'm not keeping it to a square angle. I'm varying the angle as I go. It's easier to see it when you're doing it. It doesn't really portray well on the camera, but you'll see when you do it that it makes a difference if you change the angle. It gives you a finer cut. Here you notice with the scraper I'm using it actually below the centre line, whereas most of the time you're above it. But with scrapers quite often you can use them below the centre line, and then it gives a better cut again. Refining the back or the bottom of it as it will be as well. Now I tend to sort of do the top and bottom and then sort of refine them into each other as I go. It just works for me on this type of project. Again, doing the old burnishing a bit with the wood chips. It gives you an idea. You'll see it gives you a bit of a shine on it to give you an idea how it's going to look when it's finished. Going to sand it now. These are quite a handy tool. They're mainly for like bowl turning and all. They're a little disc of sandpaper, about 50mm this one is, and they work quite well because they're good for evening out a convex curve like I want on this. So you can smooth them out a bit better than you can with just a bit of sandpaper in your hands. They work quite well. Where they're rotating, they don't tend to leave plain grooves like you can get with a normal sandpaper. They tend to blend it in a bit more. I don't use it for a lot of projects, but for, like I said, with a convex curve like this, they do work well for smoothing it out. Just slowly work it back and forth until it's as I want it, and then I should move on to finer grit. This was actually a bit of 80 I started with, just to take off the high spots and all, and then I'll work up through the grits as I go. I'm just tidying up the inside, smoothing it a bit with a bit of 120, and you can see going all over it. Just slowly work it through. Sanding takes a while, can be a bit tedious. I prefer the turning to the sanding, but without the finishing it don't work, so you got to do it. By holding both ends of that as opposed to putting pressure on with my hands, you can help it to use the curve of the sandpaper to help your curve, like. And then I work it through and just tidy up any bits I don't want. or bits I aren't happy with, like back with a rotary sander now, and moved over to finer grit. I believe this is a bit of 240. Also the pad has got a bit of flex to it, so you aren't like sanding with a flat edge. A bit of 240, sort of putting the final finish on it. If you do decide to do what I'm doing and do the inside with the sandpaper, be careful you don't put too much pressure on it, because you don't want it to grab your finger and spin with it. It's one that you want to take a bit of care with. But I'm quite comfortable doing it because I've done it for a lot of years now. So I got an idea how much pressure and what to do, and what not to do, more importantly. Do a bit of just burnish it to finish it off. Then I should check it over, and if it's alright, I should move on to the finish on it. Looked it over and I'm quite happy with the finish on it, so now I should move on to the oiling of it. Again, using the friction finish. I've got the cloth damped with it. You put it on at a slow speed to start with. You can see the old cloth caught. That's the one thing you got to watch out for. I'm using Turner's cloth again, because if they do snag, they will rip, as I said before, and save the old fingers, because they tend to come in handy. To start with, you put on very little pressure. You're just slowly building the finish up, and then as you're happier, you put a bit more pressure, and as it's a friction polish, that's what helps to build your shine up, but you do it gradually. And when you do it, just make sure you keep your bit of cloth damp, because otherwise you can burn it, and then you're buggered. You've got to start it, sand it all off and start again. So just do it a bit by bit and slowly work it up, and it works really well. And you finish it off on a medium to high speed, and put a bit more pressure. You can see the shine is slowly coming up on it. As you can see, it's come up quite nice shine. You notice like a bluey black hue on it. That's where at some stage the damp has got it in and stained the actual wood. But for this type of thing, it really looks quite smart when it's done. Now I'm happy with it. I shall part it off now. Take your time, don't put too much pressure on it, because you don't want to break it. And the last thing you want is to dig in with a parting tool and ruin all your work by now. And then when you're getting near to it dropping off, I've got my hand there, I'm not actually gripping it, I'm just getting ready to catch it, because you don't want it to bounce it around on the machine and spoil your finish. And then it pops up nicely. Anyone think I'd done it before, wouldn't you? Look, you can see what I mean with the bluey hue. It's quite attractive in this. For most jobs it wouldn't be, but for this type of thing, it looks quite nice. It gives it a bit of character. Like it, you can see what it's like now, and you can see the shape works really well with the pine and the bluey colour in it. Looks quite effective, so quite pleased with it. And I know you can't see much of the shape, but it shows you what it looks like when it's lit in the dark. Just another look at as it's finished. I finished the bottom. I always like to sign me turning. Don't know why, just something I've always done. And the little glass kit, they work well. They're quite a neat little thing to do. So I hope you enjoyed the video. and it's been of some use to you, and thank you for joining me, and hopefully you'll catch me on the next one. Bye for now.